Well, it's a new week, so it's time for me to give you an updated 2017 NFL mock draft. Now, this one is definitely a little bit different than the ones I've done before because for the first time, I've actually included some trades. Oh boy, how about that? Now, it's only a one round edition this time in part because I spent the time doing the trades and decided I just didn't want to fiddle with it anymore. So there you go. It's in the description box down below. Now, I will tell you in terms of the trades, this was just a thing of saying, hey, what would happen if some of these things um, played out? How many trades will there be in round number one? It's always hard to tell. Some years we think there won't be much activity, and there ends up being a flurry of activity. Some years we think it's right, the environment, to have all types of picks be traded and shuffled around, and then it just doesn't happen. Um, Ultimately, only time will tell what does end up happening. I don't know how much movement there's going to be, but just for the sake of the fucking hell of it, to do something a little bit different with this particular mock draft when we're less than a month away from the NFL draft, I decided to just roll with it and see what I came up with. So let me just pretty much solely talk about those trades and kind of the thought process behind them. The first trade you'll see is the Jaguars trading up from number 4 to number 2 to go get their guy, Leonard Fournette. I think at the end of the day, the Jaguars may very well be zeroing in on Leonard Fournette, even if they haven't made the decision yet. I think that's a decision they would ultimately make. There could be some thought that San Francisco, with new head coach Kyle Shanahan, might view Leonard Fournette as the type of guy to build his offense around, especially with Carlos Hyde entering a contract year and a Carlos Hyde who seems to be a bit on the injury prone side. And even if Carlos Hyde is healthy, what's wrong with having a Fournette and a Carlos Hyde in 2017 might be the approach of John Lynch, the GM, and Kyle Shanahan, the new head coach. When you look at this, you would have to think San Francisco and Jacksonville would make good trade partners in this sense. San Francisco is a really bad roster, and they need help and talent all over the place, and one draft is not going to fix them. But one way to start going about the process of fixing the holes all over that roster on the offensive and defensive side of the ball would be to accumulate additional draft picks. And frankly, since there's no quarterback worth taking for the 49ers at number 2, I would be a strong advocate for them trading back and potentially getting cutesy and trying to accumulate a lot of additional draft pick currency by trading down a couple of spots. Yes, it would mean they'd forsake taking a guy like a Jonathan Allen or a Solomon Thomas, or even a Leonard Fournette at that spot. But I think at the end of the day, that would be the best course of action for the San Francisco 49ers. So Jacksonville taking Leonard Fournette at 2. In terms of the draft picks that would be given up, you can look in the description box and see what it is. I tried as much as possible, to go based off of the draft pick chart that's been used by NFL teams for close to 30 years now in terms of the valuations of the actual value of those picks. It's not perfect, but I tried to get as close as I possibly could. So in this particular case, what did I have for Jacksonville? What did they have to give up? I had them giving up a third round pick, 68th overall, and then a 2018 second round pick. So that way they kind of soften the blow in terms of not forsaking one whole draft just to get one running back. And San Francisco would get some additional draft pick currency going into 2018, which I think would be, again, beneficial for them. Then I've got the Carolina Panthers trading up from 8 to 4. They weren't able to get Leonard Fournette, but another guy that makes a world of sense for them would be Solomon Thomas. Again, for the 49ers, Solomon Thomas would work, especially if they're switching to a 4-3. But they've already invested their last 2 first-round picks on defensive linemen in Eric Armstead and DeForest Buckner, respectively. Do you really want to sink another high first-round pick into that position when you've got so many holes all over the place? I don't know if they do. And in this particular case, Carolina, I think, would love nothing more to get their hands on, get their teeth on somebody like a Solomon Thomas. In terms of the trade-up, I don't think the cost of moving up to 4 from 8 to 4 would be so prohibitive to prevent the Panthers from doing it, especially because it'd be very unlikely that a Thomas would get all the way to them at number 8. You could maybe roll the dice and pray that he got there, but I wouldn't count on it. And if he's your dude, then you go up and get that dude. I've got the Tennessee Titans trading up from 18 to 13 to go get Mike Williams. It might be one of those things where they'd be concerned about one of those teams ahead of them potentially taking a receiver. They might be concerned that Arizona would take one. They might be concerned that even with Philadelphia, signing Alshon Jeffrey to a one-year deal, it was still a one-year deal. Torrey Smith, what is Torrey Smith at this point? Even having Jordan Matthews. What would totally prevent them from taking a Mike Williams in terms of the long-term picture scale of things? What would prevent Baltimore from potentially taking a guy like him? Even maybe a Washington, perhaps, even though they just spent a first-round pick on Josh Doctson as a wide receiver last year. So there might be a fear factor there for Tennessee if they really like a wide receiver, like a Mike Williams, that they might have to move up a few spots in order to get him. Again, how likely is that to happen? They might be able to stay put at 18 and still get a dude, but they might not. Then the next trade, what's the next trade I have? I have Houston going up from, 25 to 22? Yes, 25 to 22, that's right. So I've got them trading up to get Patrick Mahomes, in part being the fear that the Giants at 23 may very well end up taking him. Now with Tony Romo retiring and the trading away of Brock Osweiler, the Texans, you're staring down the barrel of Tom Savage being your unquestioned starter. Long term, is that really going to be your answer? You have a Super Bowl caliber defense. You've got to get better on the offensive side of the ball. You've got some talent on the offensive side of the ball. You've just got to get better at the quarterback position. At some point in time, the Houston Texans, for God fucking sakes, have to spend a first-round pick again on a goddamn quarterback. Because Dave busted out, that was 50 damn years. You wait another 15 years, you're staring down the barrel of the Kansas City Chiefs, where then you end up having to trade for somebody else's
average starting quarterback, and then you make the playoffs, and you basically end up being the same fucking team you already are. You've been down this path with Matt Schaub. You've been down this path with Brian Hoyer and others. It's time to draft and develop a dude. And for a guy like Mahomes at that point in time, to me, he makes a world of sense for the Houston Texans. I've got my Chicago Bears trading up from their second-round slot to number 27 to go get a Corey Davis. Look, at the end of the day, the Bears still have talent needs on both sides of the ball. You don't know what you're going to get out of Kevin White, especially whether or not he can stay healthy. You let Alshon Jeffrey go in free agency. You got to get some type of talent on that offensive side of the ball, too. And a guy like Corey Davis, man, I would nut myself if they traded up back into the tail end portion of round one to get him. But again, with the three quarterbacks already off the board, and Trubisky going to Cleveland at 12, Kizer going to Washington at pick 17, and now Mahomes at 22, the Bears, maybe they would trade up into this spot to look at a quarterback, but maybe they wouldn't, and they'd want to take a superior player at a different position and find their quarterback somewhere else. And then I've got the Chargers trading up back into the tail end portion around number 1 for Deshaun Watson. And the philosophy behind this is Phillip Rivers is already in his mid-30s. How much longer is he going to be there? Furthermore, you would have to think at some point in time the Chargers might explore drafting a quarterback. If you really like a dude, and at this point in time, after Deshaun Watson, it's maybe Davis Webb. Maybe you just stay put and take him. But if you really like a guy like a Deshaun Watson, it would behoove you, easy for me to say, to trade up into the tail end portion of round number 1 to get him, because you get that 5th year on that contract potentially in terms of player options. So you get another year of potential control, which is going to be critical with a guy like a Deshaun Watson or somebody else backing up a guy like Phillip Rivers, because at the end of the day, when you look at Phillip Rivers, he might still be 2, 3, 4 years away from leaving. So you might be taking one of these quarterbacks and sitting on him for an extended period of time before you fully turn the keys over to him. And, this worked before for the Chargers pretty well. They had Drew Brees. They drafted Phillip Rivers. Rivers sat behind Brees for 2 years and didn't really play. And then he got the keys to the car in 2006. Who's to say that a guy like Deshaun Watson can't come in, sit behind Phillip Rivers for 2 or 3 years, a la a Phillip Rivers, what he did behind Drew Brees, what Aaron Rodgers did behind a Brett Favre, and then come out and be the replacement long-term for Phillip Rivers for that organization. If you're a team like the Chargers, you could draft for needs at other positions, but at some point in time, you got to start looking at the future, and you got to start thinking backup quarterback, and a long-term answer at the position is pretty damn important. I wouldn't be surprised if a team like Pittsburgh jumped in at pick 30 with some of the hemming and hawing of Big Ben about how much longer he's going to play and take a quarterback. At the end of the day, this mock is kind of crazy to me because there are 4 quarterbacks going in round number 1. I personally wouldn't take these 4 quarterbacks, all of them in round number 1. That's for damn sure. There's a chance that at least 3 of them end up getting drafted in round 1. Again, based off of the logic that I've put in place here, you could make an argument for 4 of them going in round number 1. Because at the end of the day, there are teams that are so desperate for quarterbacks that if they get any hint that that dude can be that dude, they're probably going to do what they can to take him. And that's that simple. In terms of if you look at this mock and you see other players at certain spots in the draft, or you see where other guys didn't get taken in round number 1 and you think they should,
Especially if some of these quarterbacks that really don't deserve to be taken in the first round get taken in the first round, you can get some incredible talent in round number 2 and even round number 3 and so on. You're going to have guys slip in this draft, I assure you. So even if you've had some perceptions about certain guys potentially being first round picks, or you believe in your heart of hearts that there's no way this guy's a first round pick because he's a workout warrior. How many workout warriors get taken high and higher than they really should every year? How many guys slip because of this or that or the other reason? It can happen. So while I had 6 trades here, and I don't think that's all that believable, again, it was just something to do, playing out different scenarios. It's a fucking mock draft. And to me, at the end of the day, the only mock draft that really truly matters is the last one that I do before the NFL draft begins.